All right, so MiniMax M3 just dropped with a 59% Sawi Bench Pro score and a 428 billion parameter MOE architecture. And I want to put it directly against ChatGPT Computer Use to see which one actually holds up for real agentic work. Both of these models are competing for the same autonomous agent budget right now. And I'm comparing them across 4 tests, pulling from vendor docs, press coverage, and community pricing data. No vendor money involved. And honestly, what surprised me most is that one of them has almost zero published benchmark data, and that gap might actually change how you budget your entire agentic workflow. So this comparison is for you if you're trying to pick an AI agent that can grind through long autonomous tasks without babysitting it every 5 minutes. Because pick the wrong one, and you're either burning money on opaque pricing you can't budget, or you're waiting 8 minutes for a first response on a task that needed to be done an hour ago. Test 1 is autonomous task completion. And the failure mode here is brutal. You kick off a multi-step engineering job, the agent stalls out or hallucinates halfway through, and you've lost hours of compute time with nothing to show for it, which is the real cost when an agent can't actually finish what you started. I looked at the published numbers, and what surprised me is how one-sided the data is. MiniMax M3 has a 59% SDOE Bench Pro score, a 74.2% on MCP Atlas, and a vendor demo, where it made 1,959 tool calls over 24 hours to push GPU utilization from 7.6% to 71.3%. ChatGPT Computer Use has no published figure on any of these benchmarks, which makes a real scored comparison basically impossible. Now, take all those M3 numbers with a grain of salt, because every single one of them is vendor reported. There's no independent third-party replication yet, so the gap between M3 and ChatGPT Computer Use on paper might look bigger than it actually is in practice. And ChatGPT Computer Use could be performing well on similar tasks and just not publishing the receipts. I was expecting this to be close, but M3 takes it purely because it actually has numbers on the board. When one side posts a 59% Sawi Bench Pro and the other has nothing published, you can't call it any other way. And MiniMax M3 goes up 1-0, which is really a documentation win as much as a performance win. Test 2 is API pricing and cost transparency. If you can't get a per token or per task price before you start building, you're basically pulling a lever on a slot machine every time you scale up. And one surprise billing cycle can blow your entire monthly budget on a single overnight agent run. What I found here is pretty clear. MiniMax M3 has a promo rate of 30 cents per million input tokens and $1.20 per million output tokens. And you can verify that on OpenRouter right now. ChatGPT Computer Use has no published per token or per task rate at all. It's wrapped inside a Plus or Pro subscription with zero cost breakdown disclosed. Honestly though, M3's pricing story isn't totally clean either. The token plan subscription drew enough user backlash over perceived hidden price hikes that it caused a 15% stock drop. So both sides have some opacity here, just in different ways. And if you're on the subscription side, read the fine print carefully. I was expecting OpenAI to have at least something published on computer use costs, and they just don't. M3 wins this one because 30 cents in, $1.20 out is a number you can actually put into a spreadsheet and plan around. And that's MiniMax M3 up 2-0 now, with both wins really coming down to documentation that ChatGPT Computer Use is missing. Test 3 is multimodal reasoning and vision. The failure mode here is when your agent misreads a screenshot, skips a chart, or can't parse a PDF correctly, and then confidently gives you wrong output based on what it thought it saw, which compounds fast when you've got an agent running 50 steps unsupervised. What surprised me here is how architecturally different these two are. M3 was trained from step 0 on around 100 trillion interleaved text, image, and video tokens with a 600 million parameter visual encoder baked in, and it posted an 83.5 on BrowseComp per vendor docs, beating Claude Opus 4.7 79.3. ChatGPT Computer Use has vision, but OpenAI hasn't published a single multimodal benchmark score for it. That said, press hands-on testing found M3's practical multimodal outputs pretty mixed. Strong on document parsing, but SVG generation was rough and photo-based location identification failed. So the benchmark number looks great, but the real-world feel is kind of uneven, and ChatGPT Computer Use might actually handle everyday screen reading tasks more reliably. We just don't have the data to confirm it. So M3 takes this one too, but I want to be real with you, it's a default win. I was expecting at least some published vision scores from OpenAI, and there are none. So M3 gets credit for an 83.5 BrowseComp and a native multimodal architecture, and that puts the score at 3-0 for MiniMax M3 across the first 3 tests. Test 4 is real-world computer navigation reliability. The concrete failure here is the agent clicks the wrong button, submits a form with bad data, or freezes mid-task, and you don't catch it until the damage is done. Because when you're automating anything that touches real systems, a wrong click can mean actual downstream errors. I looked at what's out there, and the picture is honestly pretty messy for both sides. M3 ranks number 1 on Claw Evo per press coverage, but the same reporting notes, real-world completion rates still have room to improve, and time to first token can stretch to nearly 8 minutes on hard tasks. ChatGPT Computer Use gets higher marks on polish and feel from users, but no accuracy figures exist anywhere. And what kind of levels the playing field is that user reports on both models say they hallucinate actions and click wrong targets often enough that neither one is ready for unsupervised production use. So the gap between them in real-world reliability is probably a lot smaller than the Claw Eval ranking makes it look. And it really comes down to whether you care more about polish or raw benchmark position. This one's a tie, and I think that's actually the honest call. I was expecting M3's Claw Eval #1 ranking to push it over the top, but when both models are hallucinating actions and neither has published error rates, you can't score one above the other, so the final tally is MiniMax M3 3, ChatGPT Computer Use 0. 1 tied. MiniMax M3 wins on documented performance period. It has a 59% sub-Bench Pro score, a 74.2% on MCP Atlas, and a verifiable API rate of 30 cents input and $1.20 output per million tokens. And it's the only one of the two that can sustain a 24-hour autonomous engineering run with 0 human check-ins, which is honestly a pretty different capability class. ChatGPT Computer Use wins on feel and fit. Users consistently say it's more polished and reliable for everyday browser and desktop navigation. It's designed for real-time interaction, so you're not waiting 8 minutes for a first response. And if your team is already deep in the OpenAI ecosystem, setup friction is basically 0 compared to onboarding a new API. Honestly, I went in expecting a closer fight, and what I got was one model with receipts and one without. So here's the decision rule. If you need a background engineering agent that grinds through long autonomous tasks at a known budgetable cost, go with MiniMax M3. And if you need a real-time desktop assistant that feels polished and plugs into your existing OpenAI stack, ChatGPT Computer Use is probably the more comfortable choice today.